because this is a man who has, I mean, his background or his training is in engineering, but for the entire time that I've known of Sam Dowlath and know Sam Dowlath, he has been with the agricultural sector in the country. He was previously at NAMDEVCO, but has been working with farming communities and farmers, and in particular is a repository of knowledge. We talk a lot about the theme of from the kitchen table to the world, and a lot of the opportunities, but a lot of the real challenges that producers, whether it's the farmers or the value added in the sector, face in terms of accessing not just distribution in a local context, but also distribution and access to markets. And that is a whole topic by itself, but I'm sure Sam will find a way to hit some of those markers that we need to really grapple with. So please welcome Sam Dowlath.
A few ideas which I've picked up along the way. But before I start, I just wanted to connect something that the previous speakers that the question of the loss of our bee colonies and the question of food security, because there are many other factors other than climate change which impact on food security. One of those is, for example, the question of industrialization of agricultural production. And today in the developed countries, North America and Europe, we hear about bee colony collapse because of the amount of pesticides which is being used in crop control in these countries. And because we are so copycat here in Trinidad, certainly, maybe not so much in the rest of the Caribbean, that is also a big, big danger for our continuing efforts to produce food. I just wanted to make that point. So I'm the son of peasant farmers, and really I'm honored to be addressing so many young people because it tells me that yes, we have not lost all of our generation may have failed, but the younger generation is still around. It's their future, and it's good to be talking to people like you. So, although as I said, I have no formal training in marketing, I'll attempt to honor the essence of the theme, which is the Common Sense Convois, and try to apply much of that common sense to what we're doing. I mean, listening to the last speaker, you could see how they use their wits to deal with technical and marketing issues themselves without support from any state institution. And I think it's all credit to our people that they can do that. And it is an inheritance which we have. Our parents came here into the economy, and they had to survive by their wits. And that those genes seem to have passed on well, and all that gives me a sense of hope for the future, and encourages me to continue in my little way to make my little country. So this market thing, where are the markets we're talking about? Well, if we take the wider Caribbean, we're talking about 30 million or something like that, is it? From Cuba, including the DR, come down the islands and include, let's say, Guyana and Suriname. We're talking about 50 million people. That's not a small market. But the interesting thing is that, well, certainly not for Cuba, perhaps not for the DR, but if you take the other countries, a huge percentage of what is consumed is actually imported from outside of the region. In CARICOM is estimated at $4 billion per year. In Trinidad, it's about 4 billion TT dollars per year. But the interesting thing about the Trinidad figure, apart from it being high, is that it represents 80% by volume of what we consume as a people. So we are extremely food insecure in that way because of our dependence on sources outside of the Caribbean for our food. And where does that food come from? Far too much imports from outside the region, they said. And what do we really consume? Rice, and much of Guyana and Suriname's rice is not marketed in the Caribbean. Wheat, from the temperate climates of the Caribbean. Corn, very little produced in the Caribbean. I hear our Minister of Agriculture is now saying that soya bean is a staple, but I think he has his facts a little mixed up because the soya bean which we import, large quantities in the Caribbean indeed, but it comes in because that soya bean is converted into soya bean meal, which goes into our livestock subsector. So it is staple for the livestock, not the people. But it is a large quantity. And in terms of meat, like I said, the grains, the corn and so on, as well as the soya bean, the livestock sector, especially poultry, is heavily dependent, 100% dependent almost on imports. Oils and fats. Well, I think many of you will know the story of coconut, the coconut industry in the Caribbean. Late 70s, early 80s, when they were industrializing the livestock sector, these huge farms where they were feeding livestock concentrate feed. They wanted to make these feed concentrates, they needed a protein input. They had corn as carbohydrate input. And they turned to soybean. And so over the years, millions and millions and millions of acres of GMO soybean was planted all over the world. Now to make soybean meal, you have to crush the beans and press out the oil, and you're left with the meal. So then they had millions of tons of soybean oil, and they had to do something with it. They couldn't put it in the ocean. So they decided, well, they have to sell it, and as they want to do big business, they could be very strange to the truth when they're ready. And they started to say, you know, these tropical oils like coconut oil and palm kernel oil, they're no good for you. They have cholesterol, you die if you use it. And so what people who were using these things happily for decades and generations and living very healthily to a ripe old age and very strong, they started to use these GMO-derived oils from soybean, from corn, canola as a special case in point, and so on. And we forgot about coconut oil. So that the coconut industries in the Caribbean collapsed, more or less. Today in Trinidad, I would hazard 95% of the coconuts go to the freshwater trade. And the little bit we have some processing takes place. You have to pay $5, $6, $7 for dry coconut in the market. In Guyana, they have maybe over 20,000 acres under coconuts. They haven't been affected as we have in Trinidad with pest and diseases like red ring and now the red palm mite and so on, but it's not yet. And they have production now, it's coming through their ears, and they're not sure what to do with it. But there are no investors for taking the coconut and adding value and making oil with all the coconuts that they have in Guyana. So when it is that we look at what we consume, we see that over the years, very quietly, the industrialized countries have found a way to get their products into our markets in the Caribbean. And you know, one of the ways they've done that is through these international agreements, the WTO in particular, where they tease you, the EPA a good case of that, the agreement between the European Union and the Caribbean countries, or the ACP countries. When they found they couldn't get us all together around the same table singing their song, they split us up. And now, at the end of the day, they virtually forced an agreement with the Caribbean. And they're saying, listen, our markets are going to be open for your products, so you have to open your markets for our products. So they come with their products, including the one that says they're finger linking good. Probably finger linking, but actually good. And that's just one example. If you look at Trinidad is perhaps the worst case, where we have nearly every franchise from North America in this country serving bad food, fast food. And so we have to talk about how we're going to deal with this issue, because this bad food is leading to lifestyle diseases. And the other parts of the culture which has been brought into this country, people no longer engage in much physical activity. And those who are conscious about it perhaps spend some money in gyms and so on. But people don't walk as before, they don't work the land as before, they don't recreate as before. Or not enough people do. And therefore, we end up looking like myself, very obese over the years. And this is not because we eat good, it's because we eat bad. And we have bad practices. And I'm really looking forward to hear Professor Tilak Singh this evening, because we really need to address this issue like from yesterday. We're already too late on it, and we have to deal with that. So to my mind, it really has been an insidious plot by foreign food interests to get us to use their technologies which are inappropriate to what we need in the Caribbean, to get us to consume their products which are not good for us. And they do that very consciously, but they know how to use public relations well. And the unfortunate thing is that we have come from a culture of people who know how to make ends meet and could conserve a very balanced meal with what they had in their backyards. And today, I'm glad there's somebody here who's practicing permaculture, because we need to go back to basics. We need to see how we integrate nature into everything we do. And don't look at agriculture simply as producing some fruits and vegetables, but that is intricately wound with several other aspects of our daily lives. I mean, agriculture, you produce food for human consumption, you produce feed for livestock consumption, you produce fibers, you produce fuel now, it's a big thing. And you know, so many millions of acres are now going into alternative fuel, as they call it, biofuels. That is also impacting on climate change. And really, you know, Roger, you should really take a hold of like this, because all those issues you raise which impact on food security, I mean, they're half this by themselves. And they impact on us in a really direct way. So having painted that kind of picture, what are we really going to do about it? Well, yes, this is our common sense. And what does our common sense say? That what we're doing is not working. We have had a Ministry of Agriculture in various forms for decades, and our food security situation has gotten worse. That speaks for itself. What we're doing is not going to solve our problems if we continue to do it the way we do it. Certainly, the strategies have been wrong, because we have been opening up the economy to food imports without restraint. And, you know, the beekeeping brother of Marine was talking about these standards that we don't have, but which we want to apply to the local products. But when the goods come from away, you think they're really tested to the extent that they should be? Remember, 80% of what we consume in Trinidad comes from away. You think they're really tested? You think anybody bothers? When you get cabbage that comes from whichever part of Canada and so on, you think anybody tests for pesticide residues? It's not that I'm complaining that they don't test. I'm saying they should test. And they should have as rigorous inspections as they want to provide to us. And they shouldn't use this thing as a way to prevent our small entrepreneurs from getting into the marketplace. Because these food importers, they're not easy, huh? And they contribute quite heavily, I'm sure, to the political campaigns of the parties. That is the only reason I can suggest why we continue to import more and more food every year. Because there's no good reason why we should be doing it. We should be encouraging our local production. We should be making livelihoods for our farmers. We should be generating future for youth who want to get into food production but don't see a future in it for them, or they don't see hard work, no rewards, and all your friends going on working in energy and in manufacturing, earning a lot of money. Now, we do have a lot of challenges to face in the Caribbean. And some of it was referred to earlier by Roger. But that document, Roger, it's a food security document for the Caribbean, wasn't it? About 2 years old now. And a lot of thought would have gone into that. In fact, it's one of the better documents which have come out in recent times. But you know, the agriculture as a sector must have been the most overstudied sector in the whole of the Caribbean, more so than tourism and everything else. So we have lots of people, all of them good, but there's a problem. The problem that Roger alluded to. We have them there, what are we going to do about that? When I'm going to finish in a couple of minutes, I'm going to say what I think should be done. Huh? If we take the local situation, some of the challenges that our food producers face, land. And I know Dr. Williams will be talking in detail about it. But we're talking about the availability of land for those who want to produce food. We're talking about the cost of land for those who want to produce food. And sometimes we forget that without the land, we can't produce much food. And we take the best lands we have in Trinidad and we put it on the highways and houses and industrial estates. We mow down farmers' crops on the best lands to put on houses. And we seem to want to do everything, run highways, apart from destroying the ecology of the area. They destroy hundreds of acres, again, of food crop lands. We seem to set a priority to every other thing but that which should have priority, which is producing food on our lands. Listen, the best lands in Trinidad are in the valleys and foothills of the northern range. We have the A-class soils there, maybe over 90%. And we have a little bit in the central range and some little pockets around the base. And we know what has happened in the East-West corridor in terms of what has happened to that land. South of the Caroni River, we have a lot of clay type soil. And it is really a tribute to our farmers that they have been able to work these lands and make them productive, make them more and more amenable to agriculture, using their wits, mulching the soil. I mean, the first time my father bought an agricultural chemical is what we know as 7 powder now. In those days was herbicide. Was in the 1960s. Before that was pen manure, and we welcome worms because we know what they did to the soil and so on. So what did herbicide do? What did 7 powder? What does it do? It kills the worms, right? And when we look at the technologies which are being offered, basically what they tell you is wipe out what nature has provided there. Start with bare soil, and then till up that soil, and do whatever you can with it. Add synthetic things into it. You don't know when it's leached, it goes into the groundwater, into the rivers, and so on. And really, I'm Mr. Pumaker, you could raise your hand, will you? All right then. You really have to dog me for the end of the day, please. So I was talking about the challenges we face on land is one. Infrastructure. I mean, a good example is what has happened with the lands which have been distributed to the former employees of Caribbean. First of all, there's a decision taken that 2 acres is what we will get. And then the 2 acres are all about the place. They don't access it easily. There's no drainage there, there are no irrigation systems in place, bridges. You know, how are they going to produce? It's also far from where they live in most instances. How are they going to produce? They're not being allowed to build a house on the land. How are they going to produce? So, by saying we are making land available, it's good PR, yes, but practically, is this land being cultivated? It's a big problem if we don't put land under agriculture. How are we going to get the food we say we want that? So Alan later will have a lot to say on that, I'm sure, historically how things have happened and where we are at this time. But really we need to address this issue of land and infrastructure for agriculture. I know that I'm not sure if they're part of the formal program, but even with the limited production we have in Trinidad, farmers have difficulty because of marketing systems being inappropriate to their needs. And that's to the extent that they're left with crops after the seeds have passed. Wikipedia is really a big problem here. And if the ADB is offering loans to buy security cameras and so on, that's a solution which is part of the solution. They need much more than that. And the farmers have been saying for a long time what they need to do. But when I hear my Minister of Food Production saying that $10 million is too much to spend behind a pre-loss squad, well, I get worried. I really get worried. See, one of the problems we have in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not sure to what extent it is so in the US and the Caribbean, we don't have a good system to capture information on agricultural production. We don't know what we're producing really. We don't know how much goods are lost by farmers every year. So by saying that $10 million is too much to spend as part of a solution to stop that, is showing to my mind that you really don't care about these people who lose their crops. $10 million is too much money to spend. There are other challenges which the farmers will continue to face. One, for example, is we're hearing a lot of PR about having our food import bill in the next 3 years. There's a brand new 3-year action plan. A brand new 3-year action plan. How that will develop, I don't know. I belong to the sector and I hear they have a plan launched in Chagaramas. I have a few good farmers in Chagaramas, but most of the farmers are in the East-West corridor, in Central Trinidad, in South and Southeast, Southwest, and so on. But it's instructive that this thing is launched on a large farm which start to produce onions, and they say they will produce carrots, don't mind the first crop fail. No, it sends a kind of signal that maybe this is the future of agriculture, these large farms owned by big business. And to hell with the thousands of small farmers who continue through wheel and road to produce food for our people. I heard another thing many months ago. Now, therefore, is going to set up 4 packing houses in this country. And then I didn't hear anything after. So I don't know if they're setting it up. And if they're doing it, where they're setting it up. And if they're setting it up, or they have done any groundwork to determine the need for it in those areas, and so on. I'm not trying to flog the people who work in these organizations. I'm saying we are harebrained on the issue. Because we have a sector which, if we want to develop, we need, first of all, to have a strategic plan. Where we want to go, how are we going to get there, where's the roadmap? and then the ADB, and then NAMDEFCO, and then the Agricultural Society, and the Ministry of Agriculture, they can all then develop their own work programs. But we don't have a strategic plan for the sector in the country. So we don't know where we want to go. We only use them figures. Reduce food import bill, bring so much 1,000 acres under production. We put 200 kilometers of road, access road, and we dig 300 ponds. What impact does that have on our food production? Who is measuring it? There's no system to measure that. We need to deal with those issues. If we don't deal with this sector in a very scientific way and using our common sense, we ain't going nowhere. We're going to continue to mark time. And the frightening scenario is that as climate change and the other factors like conversion of land and crops to biofuels and the other factors which continue to impact on worldwide on food production, it means not only like in 2008 prices are going to be hiked and continue to go up, but countries have started to keep food for their own people. We saw what happened in 2008 in Haiti. It is not far-fetched to say that that could happen in Trinidad and Tobago in a couple of years if we continue the way we are going. It is something frightening to contemplate. But to my mind, it's a realistic if we continue to play silly and just use figures and PR and don't put the necessary program. I again have to hark back to the Minister of Agriculture in his contribution to the last budget debate, saying that $1.9 billion was adequate for agriculture. And then he comes this week and says, no, I need $500 million more. Because of that $1.9 billion, $1 billion going to pay bills from the previous years. Are we serious? Could we start to change a sector with 1 billion or 1.5 or 1.9 billion TT dollars? We couldn't be serious in this country. One of the things we seriously lack in this country is a research agenda. You know, it warmed my heart to hear Rupnine talk about the little work they're doing, the way they have linked up with Shemia and so on. It warms my heart. And I know of so many, dozens of women in particular who've been able to develop products around fruits and vegetables and so on. But they have not been able to move forward with it because beekeepers have found their way. They have not been able to move forward. At the same time, we continue to import, I don't want to say hundreds, I don't need figure, but a lot of stuff for our processing industry. We import the raw material. We give concessions and tax holidays to the big food processing companies. You know, I understand that the finger-licking people got a waiver on the duty on French fries. Yeah, they got a waiver and they bring something like I don't know how much, 4 or 5 containers a week of French fries into this country. They got a waiver on those duties. You can believe that? A research agenda. If we really start to produce in the quantities that we need to deal with our food security situation in the Caribbean, and while I might be localizing my presentation to the Trinidad situation, it is what I know best. But the thing is, as a Caribbean nation, together we could do it very easily if the will is there to do it. But if we start to produce these very perishable products, and all food products generally are perishable, then we have to find a way to add shelf life, to stabilize it, to add shelf life, to extend the shelf life over weeks, and to add value indeed, so that the distribution process becomes easier. And I was a student of Professor George Monsami. Many of you all may not have heard about him. But since the early 70s, we developed the technology in Trinidad to use an industrial process to make sorrel concentrate. And today we import sorrel concentrate for manufacturers to make sorrel cordials, which are sold in the supermarkets and which we buy Christmas time. And that was done based initially on research at the Unit of Food Technology. And Kiriri had done the pilot plant work. And that pilot plant worked for many, many years as a commercial plant very successfully. I'm using that as an example to show what little effort, little resource can do. Because in the Caribbean, we have our exotic fruits in particular, also a wide range of vegetables, which if we produce in the quantities we need, because most of them are seasonal and they depend on the weather and so on, we want to be able to hold on to them to add shelf life so that the distribution process becomes easier and we can take them throughout our country, the Caribbean. And therefore we need to do R&D work on that. Nobody's doing it for us. We have in Trinidad, the Trinidad and Tobago Agribusiness Association. They are beneficiaries of a $172 million contract over 5 years. And the two products that they have commercialized based on local production, as far as I'm aware, part of the original plan were making French fries out of sweet potato and cassava. French fries, right? French fries, and not even coconut oil fries. The point I'm making, are we going backward or not? If you want to make products from cassava and sweet potato, go to our old people and ask them how they used to make it now. Farine and bami and cassava bread and pie fillings and all those kinds of things. We have a rich culture in our cuisine. We're not taking advantage of that. We're not doing that. No, we want to sell French fries in Turkey. And that's a big thing for them. The other product I know that they're putting in the supermarket is coconut water, but really not adding much value. But for the wide range of fruits and vegetables and herbs and spices and so on, which we have in the Caribbean, there's so much that we can do. We would simply have to look at the import statistics, and you see things we import which we did not import. You know, when I was looking at the chart earlier, we export sugar right at the bottom, right? But you know how much we import? Many, many times what we export. Because there are a couple of refineries in the Caribbean that are capable of doing the refining. But we are fast becoming a white sugar consumer. So we need a little bit of molasses, we need another brown sugar, it goes. A little bit of nutrient. And therefore, we need a research agenda which targets from the farmers and the soil and how to deal with the soil and the nutrients in the soil and how to keep them and how to be as natural as good. That they don't have to buy to put in the soil, but that the soil regenerates itself and so on. To the type of planting material, disease-free planting material, the varieties which are amenable to not only our climate, but also if you want to add value and you want to process, which are the best, which have the best nutrients and all of that. Right along the chain into packaging material and so on. And developing the technologies. We have universities with engineering faculties and natural science faculties, and we could do it. We spend money and we put graduates out, but we're not putting these graduates to work well. The opportunities are not there. So we now have to look, therefore, at how we are going to time our cuisine with healthy, nutritious, and delicious meals. That could be part of our research agenda. And educate our people. Don't stop talking to our people. Keep talking to our people from the time they're born till they get into that culture of eating healthily, mostly what we produce in the region. We should be having a school nutrition program, for example, it starts at preschool. So that our kids become accustomed to our products and the way they prepare. I think that apart from it being a market for our farms, it's the acculturization of our cuisine and our products that is so very beneficial for their long-term health and well-being. I think the social factors way beyond the economic factors, which lends itself to a very, very expanded, much better and expanded school nutrition program. I think there should be a censorship on the advertising of poor quality meals. We shouldn't be looking at finger-licking type advertising. It's not good food. And it should not be advertised. You know, in this country, we have doctors, nutritionists, dietitians. We have agronomists and plant pathologists and entomologists. And we have food scientists and food technologists and process engineers. And listen, we have so many professionals in the Caribbean who could do the task, undertake this task and perform it well. We are not putting them to work because we import in processed foods. So the opportunities are not there, the incentives are not there to encourage the local investment in either the production farms or along the value chain. So the issue I'm addressing is, what is the state of play in the markets? Well, we know where we are. We're eating too much of what is imported outside the region. I think we know where we'd like to go. I think we have overstudied the sector. I think we know how to go where we need to go. So what's the problem? The real problem to me is that, certainly in the Trinidad and Tobago situation, I'm convinced that the food importers heavily fund the political parties and that there is no push on the part of, not enough push I should say, on the part of the food producers in this country. They're very disorganized, to really force the government's hands to take the appropriate policy positions and to fund the appropriate programs which are necessary. And we need to get our act together and force the politicians. And I'm saying that broadly speaking, doesn't matter which political administration sits in Whitehall. To my mind, organize ourselves to lobby stronger and still continue to work hard and still continue as in little ways as the beekeepers to do. But the beekeepers' approach won't solve the massive problems that face the whole sector. And we need to have taxpayers' money spent properly to deal with this issue of food security, to deal with this issue of food nutrition, to deal with the issues of health, and so on. So I will rest my case there, and I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you, Sam. A number of issues raised, and I don't want to make it sound like a caveat, but we have some of the NAMDEF core people, you may not be the managers and so. And I think really what we're trying to do here is to fertilize the discussion, and if there are any contributions at all that any of the agencies that may be here that would wish to make, please, it is a process of engagement so that we can grapple these issues, take some of the knowledge and the experience, and see how we're going to grapple with and how we're going to ride this tiger. Any comments or questions? And please say who you are.
Hello everybody, I'm Walter from Jamaica. I'm a music producer. I don't know much about agriculture, but as a music producer, money doesn't come in like monthly, so it's like a job. You know what I mean? But I know that terms of shopping, going to the supermarket and stuff, imported meat are less expensive. You know that in Jamaica, I don't know if it's the same in Trinidad and other country. The local meat are very expensive, you know, and for I don't like to class people I say, you know, but for people who are working at right at the minimum wage, you know what I mean? It's pretty hard to buy local products. Um, and I think the previous government in Jamaica had a campaign, which is eat what you grow, grow what you eat. I want to know your views on that. Do you encourage backyard gardening for, for citizens? Greenhouse technology, could you talk a little more on that, please?
I'm a fan of technology. Yeah? I'm an engineer by training, so technologies don't awe me. There's a place for all technologies. If you have land like what we stand on here, obviously you don't grow anything here, so greenhouse is fine. If you have poor soil, but it's expensive, isn't it? And naturally, therefore, the production in greenhouses is likely to be significantly higher than if you were to do it in open fields. Of course, you have the advantage of having more control. And that, yes, I encourage backyard gardening. Anybody could produce their own food. Hail to them. It's a good thing. Keeps them healthy too. Saves them a few dollars. I don't, you see, technology is not really the problem. I said policies and programs. And the policy should say, yes, we support a whole range of technologies. We shouldn't say, for example, that we want to spend $200 million funding greenhouses this year and don't worry about people who want to innovate and do their own type of perma farming technology and so on. They wouldn't get support because the extension officers don't know about it, so they can't recommend it and so on. No, it's policies and programs. Come back to your first question, the question of the cost of imported food versus the cost of local food. Well, in economics, there's something called economies of scale. When they produce it in a large way, the naturally is cheaper than if you were to produce it on a smaller scale. There's also the issue of dumping chicken legs and chicken thighs and back and neck. You know, in the US, apparently, they only eat chicken breast and wings. So the rest for them is to be dumped. And they dump it at low prices. And it comes into our countries. And well, in Trinidad, they even store it off to make it appear as fresh chicken. And people buy it. Price a little lower, $1 lower. It's unfortunate. You know, one of the things I think we eat too much of meat, you know. We don't eat enough vegetables. We don't eat enough fruits. Good for our health. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian myself. But you're right. Eat what you grow, grow what you eat to the extent that you could. Ghana had what the government said was a very successful grow more, I think it was called. Yeah. And so on. So all these are good programs to encourage the population to eat more. But you see, it's not just a slogan. It's actually running the program that makes the food available and show people the myriad ways in which you can prepare the meal and lecture them on how important it is for their health and nutrition to use these products in these ways. So yes, I support those programs also, but I'm saying at the end of the day, they're just part. What you need is something which is broad across the sector, which talks to our government policy for encouragement, which put the resources in place, which funds the programs which are necessary. Huh?
One here, and hands are going up. Great.
I'm Bernadette, and one of the most fundamental problems which facing agriculture is actually labor in Trinidad and Tobago. How do you recommend or how do you propose to solve this problem? And within the Caribbean, is there any successful agriculture economy based on agriculture that we could model ourselves on?
can't pretend to answer the second question, but the issue of labor, if you look at ourselves as a Caribbean nation, we have enough labor in the Caribbean. The biggest banana plantation in Suriname imports labor from Haiti. They have no problem in Suriname with that. Okay? But we become very insular all of a sudden, and all of a sudden start to find that these criminals will come in our country, and all of a sudden we'll find that our social systems can't cope with them and so on. But the point is that we have enough labor if there's the political will, and that's why I talk about policy. If we have a policy which says that we'll extend what you call it, this Caribbean certificate, CARICOM certificate, where you can go and work anywhere, extend it to agriculture labor. A lot of people feel that they don't have that skills to work in agriculture, you know, but you need skills. In Trinidad, what we have is some, what's it called, where you train the young people into on their farms and so on. You have to acquire skills, so let them be skilled, let them come and work. It is a real problem for now, but I'm saying if there's a policy which says we can import labor, of course you'll have to regulate it, you'll have to select people and so on, but we must have the policy first. I don't think there's a shortage in an absolute and far from it. We have loads of people. In Trinidad, it's a particular problem because we have the distraction from construction and other projects, which takes away labor, which normally would have gone to agriculture. In terms of economics, I can set as an example. Perhaps DR, but I don't know much about it. I really can't say. I don't know somebody else could respond.
You all have to meet me on the half. We have the one microphone.
Thank you, and thanks to all the speakers. It's been such an excellent morning. I had two questions. One was the reference to how does that happen in Trinidad. I think the apiary specialist mentioned he was in 4-H at a point. We still have things like that, and our young people attracted to this sector. The other one was you mentioned GMOs, the genetically modified, what's the organisms. Is there a trend away or towards that in the region?
And also, the World Trade Organization, aren't we all required as signatories to have completely open markets so that, in fact, it's not only the meat that's more expensive if we grow it locally, but as far as I can tell in Jamaica, if you go to the main market, Coronation Market in Kingston, everybody who's selling there is complaining that they cannot sell locally grown vegetables because they cannot get them at the price set. And so everything in the local market is now imported produce.
You know, farmers who produce our food, they have to live too. They can't produce and sell below what it costs them to produce. They have to take care of their families. Now, when you don't have policies and programs which could assist these small farmers, the small farming sector, in dealing with those issues. For example, those small farmers really have to pay this high cost for inputs like fertilizer and so on. No, they don't have to. But what happens is that the input suppliers, they bring it in, and it's a group of them, they monopolize the market, they put high markups, and these are important costs which go into the production of our food. The cost of labor in Trinidad is very high. Agricultural labor now, at minimum, is 150 TT, which is about 25 US a day. That's the cost of labor here. For half the earlier, when he's reminded, it's running from 6 to 11, and so on. So our input costs are high. What is the cost to this country in the long term of continuing to import and risking our food security, of consuming food and in fact the question of GMOs? Yes, we are utilizing more and more GMOs. That's the trend. Once we import, that is what is happening. Our main import destination is North America. America don't care what the hell they feed the people. While the Europeans are saying you must label your food as genetically modified, the US is saying no. Even though 13 of the 53 US states have said that you must label in this state because of the influence that big agriculture business has on the White House. So the answer is to that trend, yes. So how are we going to deal with this issue? If we encourage our people to consume sensibly, to start to prepare food at home, to eat slow food, not fast food in other ways, then we find the cost of eating is significantly reduced. It will be significantly reduced. And when you prepare meals at home, you tend to prepare more healthy meals. In respect of the youth training, there is at Santiago in Trinidad, the Eastern Caribbean Institute for Agriculture and Forestry. It's for the Caribbean. I'm not sure if it extends beyond CARICOM. But I think they're taking about 100 people a year there to train them up to the technical level. Separately, the government has short-term training programs where they will perhaps subsidize. Up to the issue of policy and programs. If there is that, it can work.
Okay. You got my attention first. Let me just say, soon come, lunch soon come. We're going to, and it's good to see the younger people getting engaged in this discussion. Let's take a few more.
Hi, good day everyone. I'm Nelson from Ghana, and I just want to make a comment based on what you said about policies and the government having the right policies to support the farmer. Because in Ghana, what we do have local food is more expensive than imported food sometimes, but it's not the farmer that makes the money, the bulk of the money. The money is lost to the middleman, the vendor, right? That's the person or the supermarket. They make the money because the farmer cannot afford to deliver their food to the supermarket. They don't have transportation, they don't have proper infrastructure. So the large companies are the vendors who just drive around, they drive around with minibuses and that kind of thing. And they go to the farms and collect the food. They buy it for cheap prices and then they make the large profit. So the farmers need support. You definitely need that. You need some infrastructure to put in place so that you can deliver your food to the market or you can take it yourself. And in Ghana, we have a housing boost where a lot of farmlands are being invaded by housing schemes. So the farms are moving further and further away from the market, and farmers cannot get their food to where it needs to be. So just a comment.
This issue of pricing and producer and pricing, market, and those things will be dealt with in a greater in-depth. I mean, Sam is really qualified to continue to go on it, but I want to just flag that Wendy Lien is going to be dealing with the producer-consumer price dynamic, which ultimately it comes down to, it comes down to the pocket. Can we afford it? The big question that Sam is raising, and this goes across, would be, can we afford not to?
Thank you for those comments, sir. Because I omitted to mention that part of that price equation, which I'm sure Wendy will deal with, is much more qualified than I am to deal with that, has to do with, in Trinidad, it's a middleman syndrome. Farmers don't ever go to the wholesale market again. Now the middleman come and take it up at the farm gate. But the farmers might make, if they do make a 25 or 50 cents on a pound of vegetable, but by the time it's retail, it's 3 times what the farmer gets. And that is because of those layers of middlemen.
Good afternoon, my name is Prunella. One of the issues I just wanted to flag, stemming from what Bernadette was saying in terms of labor, I think the whole issue of agriculture, it needs to be repackaged in terms of how it's presented to young people. Because agriculture is now seen as an option for people who are not academically inclined, rather than a viable career option. So unless we begin to target how agriculture is seen and the prominence it's placed, you may not have the level of participation from the younger ones coming up. Because everyone wants to be, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer. Nobody really wants to be a farmer. They see it as a step backward rather than an actual mainstay and staple in society. So we definitely need to do something in terms of repackaging how agriculture is viewed by young people in order for it to be sustainable in the next 10 to 20 years.
I think good saying you got to them, Pranala, because that's the first thing I was thinking about. I've heard the argument being raised time and time again over. Just to add a little bit to that, one of the things, just to extend on that, the fact that I think the UWI as a regional institution has a responsibility. I think it has attempted to take up that to some extent, but there's more that needs to be done. In that they have not just looked at agriculture in its raw sense, but they sort of merge it with agribusiness and agri-management, and so they put a spin on it. And then, interestingly enough, it started off, especially in St. Augustine, as a tropical school for agriculture, something to that extent, if I'm not mistaken. But that being said, it's reached a broader issue, and if I'm to really take note of what he was saying, and I'm no expert on agriculture, please. Let me make that disclaimer early. Second thing, if I see anything that may come across as devil's advocate, really provoke the convoy, right? Convoy. But the issue of dumping, I think Lloyd West has spoken about it, and even again, Mascova Dowlath, he has spoken about that as well. With specific reference to how we in Trinidad have been dealing with the agriculture issue in terms of bringing in labor, because Pranala said that it's not packaged in a way that is pleasing to the younger ones. I think it speaks to a broader issue of integration, Caribbean integration. How effective has the CMC been so far? I have been one, I myself as an advocate for it, but how effective has that been? And you have raised the issue of how does any particular, I would say a society, because since yesterday I've been thinking of our space as a public, but how have our public been able to cope with the issue of having, quote unquote, and I use this very loosely, foreigners, as you sometimes refer to persons as, other Caribbean people, coming into a system to pursue work that, quote unquote, we should be doing, right? That's another issue that we have to do, is the dynamic as well. And so you have the argument being raised, if it is the social systems and institutions cannot really meet the mandate of this particular public, how does it do that when you have other persons coming in? And that's just the argument out there. That being said, I think if we have to address the issue, and when I raised it earlier, if we have to address the issue in agriculture, and we have to look for a model, given the fact that we recognize that the Caribbean region has used agriculture, its historic background has come from that realm, we have to use this opportunity to create or probably adapt a model that would be most effective for us. That's the way I'm seeing it, if I'm to make that argument. And I hear a strong argument about in terms of what government has to do as well. But we recognize that government's policy, and this is my opinion here, but the government's policy is what they do and what they do not do. And what I think government has done is that they have created policies. I think they have created more policies. But the question we might want to ask is, are the right policies have been involved in the consultation and formulation of those policies? And if that is not the case, then we will continue the institution that way. So that is my observation and my contribution.
Kamala?
I have two short questions. To what extent has the formation of, because we talked about farmers no longer taking their goods directly to the wholesale market, to what extent has the formation of cooperatives been explored? And this is a slightly longer question. The Cubans some time ago started using tourism as a driver for the agricultural sector so that they would grow food for the whole country, but led that, by investment from the tourism sector. But that's collapsing. Have we thought of doing that or addressed a replacement because tourism is not really our strong suit. What is driving our agricultural sector? Is it just a local market?
Let me take the other question so we could, because we have to begin to run.
Yeah, I am Arjun Singh, a former Karani worker. Mr. Dowlath made two comments about it. Today I go to the market and today I buy tomatoes for $2. Next week I go to the market, tomatoes $10. And we see that up and down and we want to know what is controlling. Because the farmers are not being advised properly not to buy it. I came from a background, my mom had 3 friends, they plant together. And they never plant the same thing. And they do the bartering across. So I think that's a food for thought. Secondly, you mentioned about big business, importers, government trends, and so forth. I would just want to draw a little example. As a past Karani worker, Karani produce the most citrus in the country. Karani are the only person who produce sugar in the country. Yet still, Citrus and Growers Association was allowed to buy our citrus cheap, our sugar cheap, put it in a pack and sell it and make a profit. When we asked them to do that in Karani, they never allowed us because we would have made a profit in Karani. Similar thing with the soft drink. So these are some food for thought I would like to raise with you. Thank you.
I can't help but agree with you, Mr. Arjun Singh, on the latter issue. Because it's truth. That's what actually happened. But on the question of fluctuation in prices, when you're going to deal with that, right? Later on. And cooperatives, they have worked in Trinidad. It's, I think, partly or mostly due to a lack of trust in that as a business model. Not that it can't work at, because we have excellent financial cooperation and movement. I know maybe 40 years ago, there was an attempt in Princess Town for a cooperative. It was going quite well apparently, and then it went the way of all men. One smart man did some tricks, and that was the end of it. So it really hasn't flourished as a business model, in my mind, mainly because of lack of confidence of the farmers in it. And what is the other issue you raised? Tourism, yeah, and the link between that. Yeah. Well, you see, there's a school of thought in the Caribbean that when tourists come, you have to give them what their custom eating. And Cuba is different. Huh? But tourism and Cuba, again, like I said, might be foreign. But the thing is, again, it comes back to R&D. Are we in a position where we could really offer, and I think we are, a cuisine which tourists would find acceptable, or most of them would find acceptable, tasty, nutritious, will want it when they go back home, and therefore open up market opportunities and so on. It exists, but they need to promote it. Again, it comes back to policies and programs.
We'll take one more from the floor, Bernadette. And I just wanted, because your topic was on markets, Zero and Sam, with all of the challenges, there are sufficient examples in the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago in Jamaica, Walker's Wood, and a couple of the entrepreneurs, Blue Mountain Coffee, etc. In other words, people who come from the agricultural sector and the value-added chain and are in external markets. And because we've had this discussion, particularly the point that has been raised about young people who are interested not only in the new forms of agriculture and permaculture and so, but who see the opportunity linked to lifestyle, the Caribbeanness, where they see possibilities in external markets. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because it's a conversation that I think younger people, who may not necessarily be the ones planting at this point, they may be the innovators in terms of the technology and in the value added and in the packaging and the linkages with artists and that kind of thing. If we could address that briefly.
See, we have had our success stories, but they haven't been low-hanging fruit. It has come through sheer willpower, hard work, spending every last cent you have and then own to, and eventually small businesses have grown. But I'm telling you, it's a tribute to the people who have taken it to where they've reached. Those examples, you raise Walker's Wood and so on. In Trinidad,
We talk a lot about Matuk, but a lot of what Matuk exports now is based on imported raw material, and so on. But there have been very good examples, and no doubt we have to encourage more and more of that type of entrepreneurship. But I'm saying, must people really have to sacrifice their lives in that way to develop a business when others make money like that? But again, it comes back to if we have a research agenda, we know what kind of products. Listen, part of the research has to be marketing research, right? Have we, for example, done what Jamaica did for Blue Mountain Coffee, what they call have it certified based on geographic indication? We have not done that for our cocoa, for our hot peppers and so on in Trinidad. We have not done that for several of the products which are unique to Guyana and Suriname, of the islands, Castle Rica and all these things. And we are missing the boat by not dealing with these issues. There are really, dozens, maybe at the end of the day, hundreds of new products which we can develop from our fruits, vegetables, and root crops, and herbs, and spices, and our livestock. Jamaican jerk is known internationally now and so on. So it all comes back to policy and program. What is our research agenda? I'm saying if we zero in on those things, and yes, the state has to be the driver, facilitating those who want to do it. I'm not a big private sector person, but given the current socio-economic structure, the private sector is doing it. They're going to the bank and borrowing money, taking the risk, but they minimize their risk. It's the small farmers who take the biggest risk, because they face all kinds of risks, from weather to pre-deal larceny to using chemicals which they don't know about, and even their health is at risk in that way. They are the real risk takers here in the society. And again, I don't want to be this point about policy and program and
from the floor.
2 quick points. I don't know if it's something that already exists. Perhaps it could be a recommendation. We spend a lot of money on vitamins and minerals, and we buy supplements. Is it possible that there can be some sort of marketing program, scheme, brochure, something, identifying the nutritional value in our local products, and encourage people to buy these products and get your vitamin C actually from the source? Or, for instance, my mother's from Guayagari, so we know about bush tea and bovine, and don't go to the doctor, you drink babash for the cold, etc., etc. Yeah, a tablespoon of babash does help. Never went to the doctor as a child. So some of the things that, my fear is that it would die out with that generation. If there's something that we can do to revive some of these things that Granny used to say, and mother this and mother that used to do, to kind of bring it back into the stream of things for those who are growing up now with children, to kind of balance it up so that we use our local indigenous herbs, products, whatever, for maintaining healthy lifestyle. The other point is that the Agri-Business Society of University West Indies, which I am not a member of, but I'm just saying, they have a youth forum that is going to be hosted sometime next year, and right now they're in the process of planning for this forum. It's supposed to be this big exhibition across Trinidad and Tobago to encourage participation in agriculture as a main staple in society. So perhaps those of you who may be interested could get in contact with them and share your wealth of knowledge in that area, and kind of provide that mentorship type role that could be useful to the Agribusiness Society at the University of West Indies. The president is Stephen Munsami, so I'm sure there's a way in which you can link up in that way and have that capacity being shared with them.
Thank you so much for that. Very quickly, on the question of the nutritional value of our foods, is established. Once we eat it properly, if we don't super boil it in oil and that type of thing, if we eat sensibly, and as I say, we have our nutritionists in this society who could provide ample advice on that. but we don't have the programs which facilitate educating the public on a continuing basis and developing the type of cuisine which today's youth might be more attracted to, that would encourage them to eat it more and more. I'm sorry, Professor Dr. Compton Seaport is not here because he could talk a lot about the value of our herbs and so on in terms of the medicinal value of it.
Okay, thank you. Let's give Sam a ring and all the contributions from the floor as well.